What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 13 top waiver wire targets. These are going to be players that are rostered in 40% or fewer leagues using the ESPN waiver wire. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe. Any questions, feel free to drop them down below. But let's just dive right into some of the top targets here. We're going to start off with Ameer Abdullah, who is rostered in 19.3% of leagues. This Sunday, we saw no Alexander Madison. We had no Zamir White. So Ameer Abdullah kind of stepped into, pretty much like the clear-cut workhorse role. He had a 90% snap share. He had an 80% raw participation, 8 carries, 5 targets, 17.5 PPR points. Now, I don't know if this is something where Ameer Abdullah has completely taken over this backfield, and if Madison and White are back, Abdullah is still going to be the guy. But I do think he gave this offense a little bit of a spark. He looked pretty solid in the pass catching game, and it's not like Madison and White had been world beaters, right? So it wouldn't be crazy to think that Abdullah could potentially hold on to the lead role. Not saying that's a guarantee, but that is just a possibility to throw out there. But one key point I will make here is that if you're super desperate for a running back play in Week 13, the Raiders actually have a short week with the Raiders playing on Friday instead of Sunday. It is a bad matchup against the Chiefs, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities that both Madison and Zamir White miss another game, both the two of them, which could make Ameer Abdullah a flex-worthy play, desperate RB2 option in their Week 13 game. Now, shifting over to some wide receivers who I think are just desperate weekly flex plays, wide receiver threes with injuries, bye weeks. We're going to go with Demario Douglas, rostered in 29.2% of leagues. Seems like I'm pretty much talking about him every single week. Not going to be a super high ceiling option, but he has put up at least 9 PPR points in all 5 of the healthy games with Drake May as the starter, and then Demario Douglas in there healthy for the full game. And in his last 3, he has gone for 50-plus yards. So like I said, I think he's in this desperate flex play range. Someone who's definitely new to the video, we have Devaughn Vele, who is only rostered in 1.7% of leagues, but he has put together 3 straight solid games. Week 10, 4 for 39 and a touchdown. Week 11, 4 for 66. Week 12, 6 for 80. He is running wide receiver 2 routes behind Cortland Sutton. Bo Nix has clearly broken out over the last 4 or 5 games. Devaughn Vele's, getting solid usage. Definitely someone to keep your eye on and potentially scoop up. And then the last, desperate wide receiver play would be Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, who was rostered in 7.5% of leagues. And out of nowhere, he has just turned into a complete touchdown machine. He has scored a touchdown on this bad Titans offense. He has scored a touchdown in 6 of his last 7 games. He has put up 11 plus PPR points in 4 of his last 5. Levis has looked much improved in the last 2 games. And so would I love starting Westbrook-Ikhine in my lineup? Probably not. But if you're super desperate, you have bye weeks, you have injuries, I do think you can do worse than someone who's clearly involved enough in their offense to score 6 out of 7 weeks. So, someone to potentially scoop up if you are desperate for a flex play. And then we're just going to run through a few tight ends who I think are playable. Starting off with Kmet, who's rostered in 37.9% of leagues. This has been a real roller coaster season here for Kmet. Early in the season, the usage was terrible. He was in a full-on committee with Gerald Everett. Then he had some big games. Then he just completely tanked. But ever since Shane Waldron has been gone, over the last 2 games, he's been much more involved. Specifically, Week 12 was targeted 10 times, caught 7 of them for 64 yards. Caleb Williams has looked really good in his last 2 games, so I don't think it's crazy that Cole Kmet could reapproach that fringe tight end 1 area. We also know compared to some of the other tight ends in this range, he does have a pretty high weekly ceiling. So Cole Kmet is definitely someone you could look to scoop up if he was dropped. Then we have Will Dissly, who plays tonight on Monday night against the Ravens. Solid matchup, rostered in 36.5% of leagues. He's kind of emerged as a top 3 target here for Justin Herbert with Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston. He's been targeted 6 or more times in 4 of the last 5 games. So not some sort of amazing talent. He's not an amazing pass catching tight end. But if you're going to be a top 3 target for Justin Herbert, you're probably going to be fantasy relevant, especially at the tight end position, which obviously has a lower bar than running back or wide receiver. And then the last guy here, kind of a weird situation. It is Noah Gray, who is rostered in 1.8% of leagues, and he has gone out and had monster back-to-back games. Week 11, 4 for 23, 2 touchdowns. Week 12, 4 for 66 and 2 touchdowns. So 4 touchdowns in the last 2 games on an offense that also has Travis Kelce. Now, I think more likely than not, these are probably like back-to-back kind of fluky games. It's not like the volume's going crazy. He's not getting force-fed. Like if this was just 4 for 23 and 4 for 66, we probably wouldn't be looking at him. It's the fact that he's getting into the end zone at such a high rate over the last couple of weeks here. But I do think you could do worse with a desperate tight end play than Noah Gray, who clearly is flashing some talent on a Chiefs offense that has looked better. Patrick Mahomes is playing better, and he clearly does have some touchdown upside week to week. And maybe he continues to expand his role. Like, he was still clearly the tight end 2 in routes and snaps behind Kelce, but maybe these big games he starts to, up his usage, and then that would also make him a little bit more interesting. And now for the rest of this video, we're pretty much just running through like handcuff running backs, guys where with an injury, they could potentially step up, be league winners. I'd rather roster these guys than like a Justice Hill type where he's probably never going to crack your lineup and he also doesn't have that great upside. These guys with an injury could become really strong plays. We're going to start off with Tank Bigsby, who's rostered in 33.6% of leagues. Maybe not completely fair to throw him into that group, but I will talk about him here. So he's coming off the bye week. He did miss week 11 with an ankle injury. And I will say, if the trend continues, the usage we've seen leading into the bye, I don't think he's going to be a super fantasy relevant option because we've seen in trailing game scripts, they like going with Travis Etienne. The health of Trevor Lawrence, it doesn't seem like it makes a ton of sense to bring him back. So this is a team with a bad defense. I think the offense is going to continue to be bad. And if they're, in these trailing game scripts, Tank Bigsby might get no run. But I also think there's the possibility where the team in the bye week, they do some self-scouting. Maybe they just want to roll with Tank Bigsby. They think he's the best back. That is a potential option here for him. I think a lot of people have been frustrated because Tank had played so well and he's still kind of getting phased out of these games because they don't view him as a pass catcher. So I think you can scoop him up, see what the usage looks like in week 13. If it's just as bad as it was and Travis Etienne is leading, then you just cut him and pick up a better handcuff on a better offense. Then we have Blake Corum, who is rostered in 14.2% of leagues. And I feel like we might need to have a conversation here about Kyren Williams. And I guess the question I have is how long can Sean McVay and the Rams just force feed Kyren while also getting just like lackluster results back from him? He's bottom 15 in rushing yards over expected per attempt. He lost a fumble last week. He had 2 fumbles in the Sunday night game, lost one of them. He is a top 3 running back in opportunity share, and I don't think that's necessarily bad. I mean, fantasy-wise, it's great to be like up there. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to be like force-feeding your RB1, but I just don't think you can convince me that force-feeding Kyren Williams is better than having a committee with Blake Corum where you can get Kyren, more fresh. He's going to have limited opportunities, but they're probably going to be more efficient. You get another running back in there. I just don't get the idea of force-feeding a running back who hasn't been super efficient on the season, now is having fumbling issues. I just don't really get it. But for Blake Corum, none of that matters, right? It doesn't matter if Kyron's not efficient. It doesn't matter if he's fumbling. If Sean McVay does not make a change based on the usage that continued last night, even after 2 fumbles, it does not seem like that change is going to be made. But Kyren injury, I feel like I say it every single week, Blake Corum is a potential league winner if Kyren were to go down, because you can see McVay just picks a running back 2 or a running back 1, and he's going to force feed the dude. That would become Blake Corum if Kyren Williams was injured. Then we have Trey Benson, rostered in 28.4% of leagues. He is the James Conner handcuff. Roschon Johnson, rostered in 17.3% of leagues. He is the DeAndre Swift handcuff. I will say Roschon has like slightly more week-to-week upside, where if you're really doing bad at the running back position, you're really desperate, more often than not, he is getting their goal line carries. So compared to some of these other running backs who probably going to have like 4 carries for 18 yards and 1 reception for 2 yards, and it's not going to do anything, Roschon at least has the opportunity to get into the end zone, which we did see him do yesterday. Then we have Sean Tucker, who is rostered in 1.6% of leagues. One thing I did notice is that their OC, Liam Cohen, he said one of the biggest takeaways out of the bye week is that they need to get Sean Tucker more involved. They need to get him more touches. His snaps were really bad. He only played 5 snaps, but he literally was involved in every single snap. So he had 4 carries and a target on those 5 snaps. Also got a goal line carry, which turned into a goal line touchdown. I think he had a second one actually after that, and he ended up fumbling it. So maybe that doesn't stick. Obviously, him working in on the goal line with 5 opportunities is pretty rough for both Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. But for Sean Tucker, he's kind of in this weird, like, double-headed handcuff situation where if Rachaad White or Bucky Irving were to go down, he is probably stepping into a very strong workload. So Sean Tucker, definitely something to look at here. Potential, like, committee member filling in for Rachaad White or Bucky Irving. Then we have Ray Davis, the James Cook handcuff, and then wrapping it up here with Cam Akers, the Aaron Jones handcuff. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for stopping by. Any questions, drop them down below. Hopefully you guys have success hitting the waiver wire, and I will see you guys in the next one.